And I'm going to start by telling you two things. Why I asked Sam to be our third name in our series, and what my relationship with Sam is. So I do believe that after Debbie, the next big name that came into the Jewish contemporary American music scene was Sam. I've known Sam for many, many, many years. We met, I think, the first time at a CAGE conference, a Jewish educators conference. We've been working together in different ways. Sam actually was the musician at all of my three girls' bat mitzvah celebrations, which is really amazing. And I was blessed with the opportunity to do some proofreading, some editing, and some educational parts for a book that Sam wrote. Sam is not just a musician, he is a Jewish educator in many, many ways. So that's my relationship with Sam. But I really believe that his music, and you will see, he knows that we had Neshama talk both about her father's music and her music, and Debbie's music. You will see that in many ways, Sam is very different from them, even though Sam is very similar in other ways. I am going to let Sam talk and present his music. I will say that Sam and I spent some time looking at what songs he would present. And it is so difficult because Sam writes many different kinds of Jewish music, from prayers, traditional prayers that he puts melodies to songs that really convey Jewish values, to children's songs. So it was sort of hard to pick a few, but I think we got to a nice, let's say, umbrella here that you can see all the things that he does. So I'm going to ask Sam to start by just telling us a little bit about his background, how he grew up, and how he ended up doing music. Sam, it's all on you. Unmute.
Thanks, Sandra, and what an honor to be here with you. I am speaking to you from Los Angeles from my recording studio, and I just finished an 8-hour session doing horns and winds for a beautiful orchestral album I'm working on for a client. I'm just feeling overwhelmed and grateful, and I'm high on caffeine and happy to be alive. This is a very strange time for all of us, but I think especially musicians are kind of caught like fish out of water in that our element is making the rounds and entertaining people and feeling the vibe of an audience. And I haven't had that thrill for a good long time now. Last week, I was fortunate to be asked to do a gig in, of all places, Kauai, which in Hebrew means it's like Hawaii. That's a joke. Anyway, it was a gorgeous spot, and I had the best time. Not only because I was in this gorgeous environment, but because I think my raison d'etre is to be with people and connect with people and share with people and feel the vibe of an audience and get an idea of what they want, to hear them singing along, to get the affirmation of applause at the end of a show. And what's interesting is COVID has put us in sort of, we've been in a isolation chamber, sort of like those tanks that they used in the movie Altered States, if you remember that, where they were floating in saltwater solution at a perfect body temperature. And our senses are really acute right now. We feel things and we hear things and we respond to things. And to not have a concert after 25 years of making the rounds in the Jewish world, and the secular world for that matter, and suddenly having a show, it was transformative. I felt that buzz. For any of you who are entertainers or storytellers or magicians or whatever, after a good experience being in front of people, you feel a real neshama buzz. If you're a teacher, I think it's the same thing. When you're in front of a group and you nail it and you feel that they're with you, you can't go to sleep for a while. You really feel that. I hadn't felt that in so long. So I grew up in the conservative movement of Judaism. I was a Sinai Temple kid, if you know that synagogue here in LA. then led by Rabbi Hillel Silverman and now by David Wolpe. I was your typical post-bar mitzvah dropout. In other words, I stopped doing youth group activities, and I went to Hebrew High and Brandeis Bardeen Institute, but didn't do too much in the Jewish realm. And then in my 20s, I had the opportunity to study in Jerusalem and absolutely had my mind blown by the rabbis and rebbitzins and my fellow students, and being in Jerusalem and having the Kotel as my place to pray and my playground and the shuk to wander around in and make friends with the Arabs. And I connected so deeply that it became clear to me that even though I wasn't ready to take on Shabbat in the Orthodox way or any of that, that this was insidious and was going to become a part of me. And it transformed my life. My music started changing. I never thought of writing Jewish music. That always seemed like something that I would leave for people like Debbie Friedman or Shlomo Carlebach, both of whom I knew and had the opportunity, especially in the last 5 years of his life, to be Shlomo's accompanist when he would come to the West Coast. I was the keyboard player they would call. But I never thought of doing it for myself. But I watched people around me, and also my choir leader when I was at Sinai as a kid was Craig Taubman. And I started realizing I'm writing all this Jewish music. I also want to get to a point in my life where I don't have to work on Friday nights. And that seemed like career suicide, because musicians primarily make their living on the weekends. And my band, when I started subbing out for Friday night gigs, immediately fired me. And Jewish music really filled that hole. And in 1992, I believe, I had maybe 3 or 4 Jewish songs. One of them was Hineni, that Craig Taubman recorded, and then Ellen Dreskin recorded it. And I wrote a Pete Chuli for Camp Ramah Hallel services. And one by one, my songs started catching on, and I thought, wow, this is nice. It's nice having an audience, and it's fulfilling something deep in my neshama, and it's allowing me to keep Shabbat, because now that I was starting to get invitations, and I played my first Cage conference and went to the first biennial and started getting sort of adopted by this Jewish music chevra, I recognized that I had found my home. And I was able to look at people like Debbie and Shlomo and Craig and say, this I can do.
Sam, you know what I find really interesting? And I think the echo is between Sam and I. But what I find really interesting is that when Debbie started composing, she made exactly the same comment you made about being very surprised that people were singing her music, and that she found that, oh, I can do this.
Right. Yeah, because as a musician, especially in LA, you're always trying to find your niche, and you always feel on the outside. We're always trying to prove ourselves and feel a little beaten down by the system, because back then, to make a recording, you had to have hundreds and thousands of dollars to invest in a major league recording studio. There was no such thing as a home recording studio, or what we have now where you have GarageBand in your laptop. Didn't exist. So that's another thing Sandra and I had talked about. She was asking, like, what distinguishes me from these other artists? And I think one thing is that I came to Jewish music after a career in writing for TV and making albums for other people. So I had a rock band and I was trying to get a record deal, but I always took recording seriously, like it was an art form, and I wanted my songs to sound as good as Steely Dan or the Doobie Brothers or Stevie Wonder or Billy Joel or Tower of Power. I heard this music that touched me, and I felt like there's no reason Jewish music should be inferior. And I heard the music of my peers, and it was not to speak with disdain, but a lot of it was just produced fly by night or just by whoever they could find who had a little recording setup and a cassette or whatever. So I always really took that seriously and tried to make albums. I've got 25 out, thank God, that would withstand the test of time. So, Sandra, you want to guide me?
Sure, Sam, why don't you tell us a little bit about your process of composing? What comes first, lyric, ideas, how does that go?
So, I write songs in my dreams primarily. I wake up with songs at all hours of the night, much to my wife's chagrin. I'm shuffling off, usually first to the bathroom, and then I leave the room and will sing it into my phone or an MP3 device. And I've been doing that since I was 7 years old. I have a lot of music coming out of me at all times. So it can be a little annoying because sometimes I just want to go back to sleep. My Yetzer Hara, my evil inclination says, it's just another song. You've got thousands of songs. Just go to bed. But much of the time I can conquer that inclination and actually lay down whatever it is. And I'm hearing the song finished. For me, that was always normal. I mean, I hear the way the song should be. I hear if it's a rock band playing it or a reggae band playing it or an orchestra playing it. And then I sing because I don't want to take the time, and it's usually the middle of the night, to write down all the parts. So I'll sing in what the bass part should be, or I'll sing what the drum groove is. Just enough to give me an idea, because when I wake up in the morning, I will have no clue, a vague memory that I wrote a song, but no clue what it sounds like. Which also creates a big problem, because now I keep Shabbat, and I don't use recording devices on Shabbat. So try as I may when I get inspired on Shabbat, which is frequently, that song is just gone, never comes back again, never get revisited by it, and I just have to let it go. So my process is I hear the song, I then try to sort of codify whatever it is the next morning. I flesh out lyrics because I usually have some vague idea of what the lyrics should be, and it might be a kid's song, it might be a TV theme, it might be a Hebrew song, and I'll feel the vibe of the liturgy, and then have to search for exactly what it says because I'll get certain words, and in the morning I will flesh out what, maybe I got the first verse and the chorus. I'll flesh out the other verse. I'll flesh out what the bridge should be. If it's something that I think is worthy of recording, I then write out parts for the band to play and bring them into the studio. And thankfully, I run my own recording studio, so I can lay down the parts in here. And I accumulate a lot of material and a lot of songs, and it's just those precious few that actually make it onto an album for people to enjoy.
Nancy, you had a question?
Yes, Sam, I wanted to ask you, number one, do those songs that come to you on Shabbat ever return? And the other thing is, I always marveled at how somebody could think about a song and then be able to orchestrate it, like you were saying, you lay down the winds or the strings. How much training have you had? Or does it just come naturally to you that you hear all these different types of music?
So to answer the first question, when I get music on Shabbat, I lose it, and I know I'm going to lose it. If I really want to hold on to it, I will try to make my entire family remember the song.
Okay.
Or there's this funny day when on Shabbat I was walking home from shul, kind of in my groove. You know, I live in a neighborhood with 50 synagogues. That's 50, within a mile of my home. And I don't like coming straight home. I usually like visiting someone, or and as I was walking, I recognized that I had this song in my head. It was a niggun, a song without words. And when I write a niggun, it usually stays a niggun. And I recognized I will lose this niggun the moment I hear another melody. So I walked into my friend Jake Segura's, who's right on the way home, and I forced his whole family, who was seated at their Shabbos lunch table, to memorize my song. I then came home and taught my entire family. After Shabbat, the song was gone. And I asked my family members one by one, hey, do you remember that song we sang at lunch? Nobody remembered. They had little snippets, but nobody had it. And 6 months later, when we were eating lunch at the Seguras, one of them said, hey, Sam, do you want to sing your song that you taught us? I'm like, what? I didn't even remember the incident, but they sang me my song, and that song made it to my Niggun album that I wound up producing with my friend Rebbe Soul. So that is rare that I'm able to hold on to a song, to make a long story short. And what was the second question again?
How have you had a lot of training in how to orchestrate?
Yeah, so I have had training. I went to Berklee College of Music when I first got out of high school in Boston. And then I went, when I graduated, and then I transferred to Boulder, Colorado, University of Colorado, and got a degree in business and voice, and then moved back home and went to the UCLA film scoring program. So I've got the background, but I never needed the background to hear the orchestrations. Because like I said, I'm hearing the song. I'm not hearing there's no suggestion that this would be a good idea. I'm hearing pretty much, oh, this is what the flutes would do in an orchestral cue. Just like you'd put on a CD or, Spotify and listen to Shostakovich and hear this. I hear the song done. So I have to extricate the parts from what I heard in that initial vision. And it's really hard to hold on to it. So I have to be careful that I sing it enough so I get the idea when I re-listen to that track exactly what's down, what I've laid down so far. And then I'll go, once I've got the bass, drum, guitar, keyboards, a horn section part, whatever, I'll sing what I hear the high violins doing or whatever else. So, and thankfully with modern technology, I don't have to write out the parts. All I have to do is play them in my computer with my keyboard and then put them in the correct transposition, right? Because the instruments often have different transpositions, at least the horns. And then I can print out charts just based on playing what I had heard in my head into the computer. So,
Sam, can you talk a little bit about the role of music in connecting to God? This is something you and I have discussed a lot. And I think Neshama made a comment when she was presenting about how her way of composing was completely different from her father's, that Shlomo would be like in a trance when he composed, because he really was connecting directly to God. So talk about your connection.
So my wife reminds me once in a while that that I'm singing to God and loving God like God is my best friend. And it's very normal to me. I was leading a Shabbaton in Sydney, Australia. It was at what they call a progressive shul out there, which is essentially what we would call a reform temple. And the rabbi afterwards said, Sam, I'm just marveling that throughout the Shabbaton, you speak about God with certainty. And that just caught me by surprise. Like, of course I do. Like, for me, it's pretty normal. I guess that was not a big leap. I think some people have a big challenge to believing in God and feeling God's presence and acknowledging that God is behind this amazing world we live in and our interpersonal relationships and the gift of love that we get from our parents or our children or our best friends or whatever, or a great powder bowl that you can ski on an untracked morning, or a perfect glassy wave that is like obeying the laws of physics and like a nautilus shell. It's that perfect angle, that perfect shoulder that you can take off on, or being at Bryce Canyon or Zion National Park or the Grand Canyon, or jumping off a waterfall north of Schenectady in those amazing rivers with those slate rock channels. Just anywhere in nature, it's so clear to me, being one who loves being outdoors, that God is present, that God created it, that God is behind all the gifts in our lives. The challenge for me connecting was, are these texts real? Is Torah real? Do I really believe what all these prophets say? Do I have to pay attention to the Haggadah, which was supposedly written by a bunch of rabbis and we don't even know who the authors were? That was the mental leap that I had to make personally. And I think partially that was because as I grew up, and I think this is kind of normal in the conservative movement. That's all I can speak about because it was my own experience. But it was presented like stories that are part of our folklore. And when you start learning Torah, you start realizing that there's divinity behind the texts, and that halacha, the Jewish law, and humash, Sinai, coming from Sinai, is something very real and powerful and an expression of God. That was the big challenge for me. So in terms of connecting it to music, because music is so much like that perfect ski slope, or standing on the beach and looking at the broad ocean and the waves breaking, it's just one of those natural, beautiful gifts we get from God. I think Kurt Vonnegut said that beer is proof of God. I think music is proof of God because it's timeless. It's eternal. You hear Beethoven's Fifth, and where did that come from? And it's eternal. Or Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, or a great James Taylor song. It touches you in the deepest way. It takes you right back. I do some shows for senior citizens on my tour, and sometimes I'm with the people in the dementia floor where they have Alzheimer's or whatever, and what brings them right back but Oyfrin Pripyatchik or All of Me or one of those great songs. So I think music is the greatest uniter of humanity. I've been to enough U2 and, The Who and all those great rock bands, and I've seen the audience united around music. Or I've gone to music festivals. I performed at music festivals where I see everyone coming together and loving each other. And that connected heart, I don't think it comes from the spoken word as much as it does from when you elevate that word into the realm of music. So I'm really grateful, even though it's a tough way to make a living, I'm really grateful that this is how I make a living. And I made a decision in my early 20s after getting out of college, and I started working for my dad in the garment business. And I worked for him for 5 years before our family company went bankrupt. It was a very painful time in our family history, but it was 1990, and I made a decision that year that I was going to do music, and that's it. And I wasn't going to be tempted by another garment industry job or even real estate, even though real estate is really tempting in a city like LA where it seems to double every few years. I just wanted to do music. So I'm a very tenacious guy. A lot of artists, I read a statistic that 64% of career musicians in the UK have given up on music since this plague started. So I'm not planning on being one of those people. My wife sometimes looks at me like, Sam, do you got a B plan? What's it going to be? But I'm hanging in there, thank God.
So before I ask you to play some of your songs, Sam, there's
Yep.
one thing that you said about music. You mentioned the power of music to unify. And I believe you are one of the very few musicians, Jewish musicians, that will equally sing in a Reformed synagogue, a conservative synagogue, an Orthodox synagogue, a Chabad event, and in ultra-Orthodox neighborhoods in Jerusalem. So can you talk a little bit about how you travel in all of these worlds?
Yeah, actually, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, may he rest in peace, was marveling at that at one point a couple years ago when I went to hear him. And he said, Sam, how many other people do you know that do this? and I couldn't think of any. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It's just, it seems to be unusual. For me, it was always normal. I think maybe because I'm the oldest of 4 boys and I'm sort of a unifier and always trying to keep peace in the house. I want to keep peace in the house of Israel amongst the Bnei Yisrael, the children of Israel. And that's why when I hear stories of disunity in the news, it crushes me. I hate it. I hate division. And I feel like there's so much more that brings us together than divides us. So I grew up in the conservative movement, as I said, so I've got a comfort factor there. I went to nifty events because my friends in Brentwood growing up, that's where they went. So I did those things. I went to just about every Cage conference for 28 years now. I love the Reform Biennial. I sing for the OU conference. I go to the Aisha Torah conference almost every year. I just have a desire, number one, to get people together. I have a desire to make a living, so I'll take the gig wherever it is. And it's another commitment I made that even though there were rabbis that were critical of that, as a matter of fact, I lost some jobs in the Orthodox world because I worked in certain synagogues that they deemed inappropriate. I just said, well, I think you guys are missing the boat. And I really listen to my neshama on what's the right thing to do. And my philosophy, my credo is anywhere you will find Jews, you will find me. And it doesn't matter if they're secular Israelis or Haredim in Borough Park, which I was just performing there last month. I'll be there. So, and I also have Shlomo Carlebach to look on as a mentor. I mean, he lost his gig with Chabad because he was singing for everybody. And at a point in his life, he realized he had to sing for everyone. And the great quote that I didn't hear him say personally, but I read in a book that he said was when the Rebbe initially told him, hey, you can't go to Washington Park in Greenwich Village and sing for all mixed audiences. You just can't do that. And you can't be in places where women are singing. And the rabbi said, well, that's not my mission. And in my opinion, that's like giving a manicure to a cardiac patient. So I don't know if I'm quoting that right, but the bottom line is that he said, and I feel poignantly, that the Jewish people is hemorrhaging. My generation, many of them opted out. Most of my friends married non-Jews. Some of them didn't get married at all. They just decided that they were going to be the end of the road. They either didn't have children or they didn't pass it on. And that seems to me to be about the saddest thing in the world. To come to the end of the road after 3,500 years of this incredible, unstoppable force. Pogroms, the Holocaust can't stop us. And then just letting it go. That is like having $1 million in your bank account, but not even knowing that it's there. So I'm preaching, I realize, but I obviously feel this very intensely.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you now to share your music with us.
Okay, now, just know that I let Sandra determine my set list 100%. And some might say, well, isn't that sort of a chutzpah? Shouldn't you play what you want to play? But I want to play what she wants me to play because I get nachas that she knows my entire repertoire. So I'm going to pick and choose because she chose about an hour and a half of material. So I'm going to open with this one just because it seems appropriate. And before I do, I just want to ask if there are any questions about what we've done so far, any thoughts or comments or whatever.
Sam,
Yeah.
Okay, it's Nancy. I just have a quick question for you. We have been watching Shabbat services and Rosh Hashanah services from the Park Avenue Synagogue in Manhattan, and they have, or all kinds of musical instruments and singing. And I wonder how you feel about that in the conservative movement. It was, to me, very, very uplifting and very spiritual to hear all this beautiful music. Many conservative shuls don't allow that. So just
Right.
with your background, just let me know how you feel about that. Thanks.
What I found is that on the West Coast, about 95% of the synagogues are now having live jam sessions, and they have given up that edict that there are no instruments on Shabbat. And on the East Coast, it's more a 50-50 thing. The East Coast seems to be a bit more traditional. And there's a lot of synagogues that still try to avoid it, or some will only have an organ, or they'll only allow drums. So there's a lot of ways to slice that. Because I took on Shabbat, at some point, you have to say, I really want to jam on Shabbat, but I need to respect the rabbis, because I don't want to be the one saying, hey, I know better than they do. Because you start to recognize as you grow in Torah that you like Socrates says, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And I just had to let them be the arbiters of what is the thing to do and not to do. So you have to understand, there's times when I have like a summertime Shabbat. I finish lunch at 3:30. I can't take out Shabbat until 8:30. I'm going to probably have a nap for a few hours, but that leaves 4 hours that I could be playing my Steinway in the living room. My recording studio is locked up, and I've got the alarm on, so I can't come in here. Not only to protect it, but to keep me out. But to walk by my piano sometimes is very difficult for me. So it's a challenge for me. I also have, and the only way I can survive working with all the various denominations is I have a live and let live philosophy. And that whatever people want to do, it's their way of connecting with God. And I'm not trying to impose what I do on anybody. And sometimes I'll get to a synagogue where I'm leading a Shabbaton, and like, for example, Greensboro, North Carolina, where they have this amazing synagogue band called the Sinai Mountain Ramblers. So they learn my whole set. They're going to perform with me on Sunday, but they also want to play with me on Friday night. So what I suggested was they light candles after Shabbat has started. The band plays. These are things I don't do, but let them do their thing. Let the band play, and when they're done, I'll go up and lead, hopefully, a rocking a cappella Shabbat experience for everybody. In other words, I can do my thing, and they can do their thing, and I don't cast judgment. Because really, I just think everybody needs to celebrate Judaism the best way they can, and yet always have an eye on growth. We should say, as Franz Rosenzweig recommends, saying not yet instead of never when it comes to growth in Torah, in terms of maybe starting to keep kosher or deciding you're not going to drive on the Sabbath or whatever the halacha is that you thought maybe you would start doing. So that's my philosophy on that. All right, anyway, I'm going to open with a song called Shabbos, unless there's anything else. Anybody else? Cut to the music. This song is one I wrote when I first moved to the neighborhood, and it's originally an a cappella barbershop quartet experience on my first album, Hineni. Today it'll just be me on the piano, and you're welcome to sing along, but you should probably stay muted because the sound gets weird otherwise. Working so hard, I keep on wondering if there is a chance I will ever be through. I'm coming so far, but just as I'm finishing, it seems there is always some more work to do. I need a day to collect my thoughts, to spend some time with you. Here comes Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Good Shabbos to you. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Now come Friday Eve, the beggar and the billionaire will each have a feast that will last through the night. Who could believe that families everywhere are singing the songs by the same candlelight? They're taking the time to appreciate the wonderful things that you do. Here comes Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Good Shabbos to you. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. When it gets darker on Saturday, shadooby-doo, I feel so sad as it goes away. I try to bring a little Shabbat in my Shavua Tov. In my Shavua Tov. Yeah, 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 yeah. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Lehadlik der shel Shabbos, Lehadlik der shel Shabbos. Good Shabbos to you. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos. Good Shabbos to you. Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you very much.
By the way, for those of you, if you are not on speaker view, I would strongly recommend that, because then you can see Sam in a bigger screen instead of in a small little box.
Excellent. All right, how's the sound out there? Its volume's all right, not distorting. Okay, finally got that wired. Thank God for Zoom and lots of patience. The next song I want to play is one of the very first songs I wrote when I started doing Jewish music. It's my song Hineni, and I wrote it as a response to Operation Exodus. I, as a child, was very motivated by the plight of the refuseniks. And it always seemed like my opportunity and my generation's opportunity to do something for the Jewish people and to make a difference. So this is the song I wrote, Hineni, of course, spoken by all of our biblical heroes at some point in their struggles to connect with God. Symbolizes, according to Rashi, alacrity or performing mitzvot with verve and excitement. I remember learning that when you do Kiddush, on Friday night, that you pour everyone's cup from a pitcher, right? After you make the Kiddush, you pour it into a pitcher and you pass around those cups. You don't pass the cup from hand to hand. You take the first one given to you. Don't pass it up, because we never pass by an opportunity to do a mitzvah. It was one of the first things I learned when I got to Israel, because of course you're on the first Shabbat table you've ever been with Orthodox Jews and you feel like a total idiot. So of course you're passing the cups. It seems like the nice thing to do. But no, you take the first one given to you, because we never pass up the opportunity to do a mitzvah. And Operation Exodus and helping our Russian brothers and sisters seemed like my generation's chance to stand up and say Hineni. I wasn't there when God spoke to Abraham, and I wasn't there when Moses freed the slaves. Now I would have walked right up to that burning bush, but I wasn't there, and Moses was. Judah led the Maccabees, and I wasn't there when Esther took a stand. In every age, we get to make a choice to rise up and take a stand, or ignore the outstretched hand. Oh, if I'm here, God, and if I can't help, let me be the one who is the first to say, if I'm here, God, if I can't help, let me be the one who is the first to say, I want to be the one who is the first to say, Hineni, 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 Hineni. I wasn't there on the eve of Kristallnacht. I wasn't there when they packed the trains. Millions were crying. Could nobody hear a sound? I wasn't there, but I feel the pain. Oh, oh, oh. If I'm here, God, if I can't help, let me be the one who is the first to say, oh, if I'm here, God, if I can't help, let me be the one who is the first to say, I want to be the one who is the first to say, Hineni, 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 Hineni. Thank you.
I want to point out as an educator that you take this song that Sam just played, and there are many of the songs that we can do this, and I can present this to a class, and I'm teaching Jewish history because several events were noted here. I am teaching the word Hineni, so way to teach Hebrew. I can teach the importance of standing up for what is right. So one of the things I love about songs is exactly the fact that we can use it to teach Jewish values, to teach Hebrew, to teach his Jewish history, all of that in one song that kids can start singing and they love it.
Thank you. Good. I also left out the bridge because I think we got to be bekitzur, keep things a little shorter, so I can get through more material. But anyway, the bridge is about Pesach and Bechol Dor Vador Chayav Adam, where in every generation we have to look at ourselves as if we left Egypt. In other words, it's not a story of a bunch of old guys and gals. It's very real and very present. All right, this is another song that is sort of a teaching value song, and it's one that I open my kids' musical Kol Bamidbar with. It's called Letter in the Torah. It's about the idea that each one of us has a special role to play in the Jewish nation, and that if one of us isn't doing our job, it's like a Sefer Torah with a letter missing, and you can no longer read that Sefer Torah. It's considered possible or inappropriate for reading if it has public reading, if it has any letter missing. So all of us matter, and it's really important to do the work and find out what Judaism means to us so that we live lives filled with Torah and appreciate our heritage. Anyway, where am I going to? How did I get here, and what do I need to know? What am I supposed to do with my life? Can I start living if I don't know which way to go? I heard somebody say in the quiet of the night, if you close your eyes, you'll hear the answer. I just wanna find my letter in the Torah. I know it's somewhere out there, if I could only see. I just wanna find my letter in the Torah, the one that's written just for me. So many words, so many pages, I keep finding more every time I look. Sometimes I need to take a little break. Sometimes I can't wait to open a book. I heard somebody say, if you listen to your heart, you were born with all the answers. I just wanna find my letter in the Torah. I know it's somewhere out there, if I could only see. I just wanna find my letter in the Torah, the one that's written just for me. It's not about the goal, it's all about the soul you use with every move you make. It's not the biggest name, it's how you play the game when you're getting it together, getting it together. I heard somebody say, if you listen to your heart, you were born with all the answers. I just wanna find my letter in the Torah. I know it's somewhere out there, if I could only see. I just wanna find my letter in the Torah, the one that's written just for me. Thank you. Maxine has a question. Yay.
I just had to find the unmute.
Yes.
I don't know, that song brought tears to my eyes. It was just something about it. And I really would like to send it to my grandson. So what album would I find it on?
That song is the title track to Kol Bamidbar, A Voice in the Desert. And that's on my website, samglaser.com.
Thank you.
Download, CD, either way. And as long as we're talking about my website, you know, you can buy stuff. I mean, most people don't buy things anymore because it's all free. But that kind of leaves us composers out in the cold because we make 0.003 cents per stream. So to actually get the CD or the download is very helpful to us. And I recognize that that is a challenge in these days where CDs are kind of done. But you know, that's what downloads are for, and I'm very grateful. While I'm thinking about it, just so I don't forget, I wrote this book, The Joy of Judaism. It took me 9 years to write it. It's 180,000 words, 420 pages, 70 chapters about everything from soup to nuts in living a joyful Jewish life. How to mine just about anything you could think of, like life cycle events, holidays, parenting, study, everything that we do for joyous opportunities. And right here, Amazon.com or my website, whatever. I'd be very grateful if you guys want to get a copy or two or give them as Hanukkah gifts. So there's my shameless plug. All right, back to my show. This next song is another one that Sandra requested. It's my song Blessing. I wrote it for my son Max just before he was born. My wife was almost 9 months pregnant and already enormous. And it was hard to imagine that she was going to have another 4 weeks where little Max was gestating. But sure enough, it dawned on me for the first time that I was going to have a child. It takes dads a little longer to figure this out. And my realization was, just like my dad gave me a blessing, I'm getting a little weepy. Just like my dad gave me a blessing at the Friday night table, that I was going to have a kid of my own to give a blessing to. And I was sort of stepping up to the plate in terms of being a Jewish dad. And just feeling grateful that even though we didn't keep kosher, or we didn't keep Shabbat or whatever, that my father kept that custom alive. And thank God my dad is going to be 91 this coming Christmas Day. So bless you, Menachem Mendel ben Rachel. May you have a refuah shlema for all your ailments. But for the most part, my dad is still doing great. So I guess I'll dedicate this to him now that I'm absolutely weepy for very little reason other than the fact that it's good to emote. And you never know when these things are going to happen.
I'll give you a second to breathe. I will just share two things. One about Sam's book. As I said before, I work closely with Sam on proofreading and writing some questions and doing the educational guide to it. And it really is an incredible book, if I may say so. But also, Sam and Masha and I share the kids' ages. And the only reason that Sam was able to play my kids' bat mitzvah was because, thank God, he had the two first ones are boys, and therefore their bar mitzvah was a year later from my girls. Otherwise, our oldest are a week apart, our second are a week apart, and I think our babies are a couple of months apart.
Right.
So that song was also very special for us, Sam, and our family.
Thank you. And you should know that I've showed up in Florida and Sandra's just said, come to my living room. I'm putting on a concert for whoever will come. So, pretty cool. All right. So anyway, this is Blessing, and it's on my album Across the River. Let's try this sound right here. May God watch over your soul, guiding every step along your way. May you hold deep in your hearts the love God is giving you every day. May the light of heaven above reflect in your eyes, so you see all the wonder in the world. Yivarechecha Hashem ve'yishmerecha, Yair Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Hashem panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. May you live all the days of your life secure in the arms of the one above. May God look upon you with favor, granting you whatever you're dreaming of. May mountains offer a path when you stroll along. Fill the valleys so you can cross with ease. Yivarechecha Hashem ve'yishmerecha, Yair Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, 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 shalom. Thank you, thank you. Time for a couple more?
Yes, and I especially want you to talk a little bit about your love for Israel as well. And
All right, that would be a good segue. So, I have a tremendous love for Israel, and I'm also sharing a lot of the angst that Sandra is sharing, in that I love Israel so much that I seem to have passed it on to my children, and my daughter has made Aliyah. She turned 21 a few nights ago. And once again, we were not with her for a simcha, for a family occasion. Because normally, of course, we would have spoiled her on her birthday. So that is a big challenge, but it is the byproduct of having a love affair with Israel that started when I had my bar mitzvah at the Kotel. Thankfully, my parents had the ability to give us, all four of the boys, bar mitzvahs at the wall, and ignite in us a fierce feeling of Zionism, a connectedness with the land and the people. My mom was a passionate Israeli folk dancer, and she would always bring home homeless Israeli men. And I didn't notice that this was unusual at the time, but they were always tall and handsome. I don't know why my father put up with it. But it was just kind of normal for us to always have Israelis around in my home. I remember after the raid on Entebbe, she had two of the officers who were on the raid who had to come to LA to escape possible retribution. And, you know, what are they going to do? Of course, Israeli folk dancing. Might as well. Anyway, that became sort of normal in my home. And so when we went to Israel, we always had really good friends. I did Ulpan with the conservative movement, specifically with USY, for a 9-week program when I was 15. I went back when I was 17. And since I started my Jewish music tour, which pretty much got going in 1992, by 1997, I had my first 50-city tour, which is a schedule I've kept up almost to this day, before the virus started anyway. And I get to go to Israel almost every year to perform at something. Sometimes it's an event for Americans, sometimes it's a youth group thing, sometimes it's a concierge tour where they want an entertainer on the last night, sometimes it's a wedding. Every time it's different, but I really don't care. If it gets me to Israel, I am thrilled. And once I'm over there, I will play for any organization for next to nothing, just because it is my honor and my thrill to do so. So I released an album in 2012 called The Promise. And thank God that album caught on and did pretty well. One of the songs that I'm going to play for you now, which comes from that album, is called Dancing in Jerusalem. Raise your hands if you've seen that video. Okay, well, you'll enjoy it, I hope. I shot it on location that year the album came out. And it was my first music video to hit 1 million hits between the various websites that put it on. It actually caught on. It's a challenge for Jewish musicians to put videos together. Just because we only have a certain amount to record our music, to put a video out and spend another $10,000 or whatever it costs is a tremendous challenge. But I like this song enough to make a video out of it. It's sort of a reggae number. And let's see if I can remember all the words. This is actually something that's been used in a lot of curricula when they're doing an Israel education piece trying to point out the miracle of modern day Aliyah, starting at the end of the 1800s to the present day, where it was the Arab countries and then the Soviet Jews, the Yemenites, the Ethiopians, how one after another, Operation whatever, brought over one people after another. We're witnessing a miracle in our modern day. And the numbers from America, I'm not sure if you're aware, but it used to be Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is helping North American Jews make Aliyah, would beg people to consider the idea, and now you can't use Nefesh B'Nefesh unless you get on a long-term waiting list, because so many American Jews are realizing, wow, Israel's got their act together, how they're handling COVID, high tech, the medical sector, whatever, agriculture, whatever you're interested in, it's happening in Israel. And in terms of my daughter making the move, how can I discourage a 21-year-old from living in Israel? Because I am telling you that I don't care if you live in New York, Chicago, Miami, where things are pretty happening for the Jewish community, it doesn't hold a candle to what's happening for young people in Israel. Israel is on fire. I go party in Tel Aviv. I wander the Shuk in Jerusalem, Machane Yehuda, which after hours, at least before COVID, was one club after another. Live music, all those little shuks selling falafel balls and chalva. At night, it's a party. I love to party. If I were a young person, I think I would have made the move. So, can't blame them. This is called Dancing in Jerusalem. God will provide your heart's desire, take you to the place you want to go. Keep dreaming of the land of your history, and you're walking the streets before you know. On wings of eagles we took to the sky, not sure how this magic carpet would fly. It's cries of joy at the first shalom, 50,000 Yemenites coming home. My heart is dancing in Jerusalem. 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 Next came Israel and Nehemiah, redeeming our brothers in Babylon. 2,000 years in the Shuk of Baghdad, soon every last soul would come along. Though it seems impossible to achieve, Morocco's Jews were the next to leave. They're a pillar of the Temple of Solomon. Hear the sound of French ringing through Zion. My heart is dancing in Jerusalem. 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 Yerushalayim ircha berachamim tashuf ותשכון בתוכה אשר דיברת. Beta Israel watched in awe from the tribe of Dan in Ethiopia. 2,000 years in the shuk of Baghdad, soon every last soul would come along. Though it seems impossible to achieve, Morocco's Jews were the next to leave. Their appeal, oh, I did that verse already. We marched for the rights of refused Nakim to help them realize their Aliyah dream. After 70 years of a living hell, see the celebration when that curtain fell. My heart is dancing in Jerusalem. 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 Your heart is dancing in Jerusalem.
Sam, I sent a link to the YouTube video,
Okay, good.
so everybody has that.
That song, by the way, kind of requires a band. Hopefully you're using your imagination and hearing the whole thing. But anyway,
But they'll see the images also.
yeah.
And I think, Sam, if I can ask you to wrap up with Oseh Shalom,
Okay.
unless you have something else that you would like to.
No, that sounds great.
Okay.
So, this is Oseh Shalom, and I want to bless all of you. Maxine, Sheila, Marta, Ivy, Paul. You're not Paul. Jane, Marcia, Elaine, Robin. You're not Robert either. Nancy and Madeline. Thank you for coming, and thank you for connecting with Judaism and with me and showing up to learn Torah. Study is the best. Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. And let's keep this enterprise of the Jewish people going with all our hearts and souls and feel empowered and capable and sure of ourselves, in spite of the fact that we often have no idea what we're doing. But go with strength, be strong, chazak v'ametz.
Sam, Ivy has a question, so maybe we should let her.
Oh yeah, go for it. It will require that you unmute.
That's what I'm doing.
Okay, good.
I wanted to know, since you mentioned COVID, how has this pandemic impacted your travel performing?
Well, like I said earlier, my first gig in 6 months was in Kauai last week. And it was shocking to be in front of an audience again. I've been doing Zoom concerts every week. I'll be doing Zoom concerts the week of Hanukkah. I have a few nights left if anybody is interested in their own home institution or just for their family and friends. I am really loving the technology to be able to sit in my own recording studio and not have to get on an airplane. I have to admit, flying, especially when you're 6'3", is not easy. But that being said, I am a vagabond and an adventurer, and I love being on the road. So it's been a big challenge. And it also, like I said, musicians have a lot of inner demons. Like, why are we bothering? I'm not good enough. How am I going to reach people? I've got all this new material. How am I going to share it? How am I going to afford to record it? How am I going to make a video? Who's going to listen? And our voices have been dulled by the advent of technology. And now the fact that any organization, be it Facebook, Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever, is marketing their services by using our music essentially for free to get people to opt in. So it's not working out for us. So we lost our CD sales. We lost our music sales. Even iTunes with downloads is disappearing. So that's been difficult. And then to lose our live business on top of it, which was pretty much the only way to make a living other than selling t-shirts. And of course, that's a big joke because you don't make money selling t-shirts. A lot of my friends are quitting. A lot of my friends, the best musicians in the world in LA, are becoming professional dog walkers or have become nutritionists or massage therapists. And they're done. They've thrown in the towel. We will feel this for years to come. So COVID has had a tremendous effect on us. but maybe a little less so for me because I always made it a point of keeping my recording studio alive. So thank God I've got clients who are still making music. So may they continue, and may people like you continue to enjoy music and support the artists that you enjoy. Hopefully that did the trick, Ivy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so you might want to remute yourself so we don't get echo. And this is a song, Oseh Shalom, and it's a song for peace and coming together as a people. Sandra, do you hear that? Okay, it's gone now. Spreading the feeling all over the earth, waiting for the day when brothers and sisters walk hand in hand and no one feels afraid. With all of our hearts we call to you, knowing you hear somehow. Like never before, we need you here right now. Oseh Shalom, Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Israel, Israel. Amen. Turn to the people who share your life and let your love shine through. Make sure to mention from time to time how much they mean to you. We're holding the future in our hands. We can be the lights. If only we'd stand as one, it could be so bright. Oseh Shalom, Bimromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Israel, Israel.
Thank you so much, Sam. Does anybody have any other questions for Sam? This is your last chance.
All right.
Just want to say thank you so much. It was a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Awesome. Great to be with you. And hopefully we'll do it again sometime.
Nancy, I'll send you an email with the link and with Sam's website, so you can forward it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sandra, for putting this together again. A wonderful evening of song and getting to know Sam, and thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Nancy.
Everyone, have a good night and happy Hanukkah to all. I won't see you before Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Enjoy. Thanks again.
Bye.
Thank you, Sam.
Sam, I bought the album and I hope I sent it to my grandson.
Good luck.
Yeah.